I'm Anthony Davis, and this is The Anthony Davis Show. It's 9 o'clock Pacific, it's noon Eastern, and here we are, Monday morning, brand new day, brand new week, brand new set of climate change measures. So, you know, there's a lot to talk about off the back of the whole climate thing. So we're going to look at that together. We're going to spend a couple of hours just hanging out in each other's company. And hopefully you can join in with the show as you normally do, because you're very good at this. You know, you're very good at contacting the program with your messages. You just talk to the device. You know, if you've got a speaker, an Amazon speaker, an Echo speaker, if you've got a speaker or one with a screen even, ideally one with a screen, because then you'll be able to see the beauty that is going on here. This Face for Radio is available to you on your Echo Show device. If you want to talk back, well, just use the wake up word followed by say, that's the magic word, and then your message, and it'll appear to me right here in the show. And if you want to join the chat and you don't have an Echo Show device, well, you also have the chance to use our new web chat facility, which is at backchannel.tv. It's a website. You remember websites from the olden days when we typed in a web address? You see, they still exist. So if you've got yourself a speaker and you're listening on the Amazon speaker, and you can hear me now on the Amazon speaker, but you can't see me and you want to chat, just go open up a browser on your phone, on your laptop, whatever, and just type in backchannel.tv, and then you'll just see the chat there, and then you can message me. So I'm Anthony. You are whoever you are. Introduce yourself as the show goes on. If it's your first time with the Echo Show speaker, it'll ask you who you are and where you are, and then that's it. Once the introduction is done, it's done. What's done is done is done. You got me? We're going to take a look at the morning papers this morning and see what's happening, see where you're at, see what's happening right across this beautiful country. It's very warm here in California today. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning and it's already about, 70 degrees. It's going to be like a high of 83 today here. So I've purposely chosen to wear nothing from the waist down, just to keep me a little cool, you know? Like the newsreaders do. Every newscaster doesn't wear pants. You should know that. It's like an industry secret. No pants, better show. Guaranteed. So a little reminder of what's coming up. Well, not really a reminder, a little tease of what's coming up, because you don't even know already. We're going to talk about public transit here in the US. We're also going to talk about the ghost gun epidemic. I don't know if you're aware of what that is, where, you effectively, well, not you, I mean, hopefully not you, but people make a gun. You know, they download the components or they 3D print the components and they kind of circumnavigate licensing laws. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about teenagers, social media and mental health, and also remembering the great American Arab poet and essayist Etal Adnan, who passed away today, aged 96. And we'll discuss her thoughts on dreaming and creativity. Two things I'm not very good at, because I never sleep. You should have seen me at 4 o'clock this morning. In fact, probably you didn't see me at 4 o'clock this morning, but I was like wide awake. But first, let's dive into this morning's newspapers, and we'll where are we going to head first? We've got plenty of people listening here. Thank you very much if you're listening to the show. For some reason, there's nobody appearing on my screen right now, so let me see if I can make that work. Riyadh, Billy, Will, Max, and me. I think that might be last time's chat. I have a feeling. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Oh, I think it's there we go. It's refreshing. That's great. So let's dive into the LA Times. Let's go straight into that, because I'm in Los Angeles, and it's a great place to start before we kind of fly off all around the country. The Los Angeles Times leads with the next pandemic's lair. Yes, it says the 10-year-old took off running down a dirt road in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, turning cartwheels, playing tag, and picking fistfuls of wild bougainvillea. Small fires flared all around Dara Lady Oliveira de Castro and her young cousins as men burned trees to make room for more farmland. On the horizon loomed what was left of still virgin jungle, dense and impossibly green. A chainsaw roared from within. This is very interesting. This is not about Amazon Web Services. This is about the Amazon jungle, which actually came first, came before Amazon retail. It says, as deforestation pushes wild animals and humans close together, Amazon jungle emerges as a likely hot zone. So that's how the Los Angeles Times leads on this Monday morning. Also, surge in Europe bodes ill for US. Across the Atlantic, a familiar battle shapes up: vaccine supporters versus vaccine resistors. This story comes from Berlin in Germany. It says winter is coming and Europe is once again a coronavirus epicenter. Germany's beloved Christmas markets are in peril and its intensive care beds are filling up. Austria is telling the unvaccinated to stay out of restaurants and cafes. The Netherlands is headed for a partial lockdown, the first in Western Europe since summertime. It's very interesting, this story. I've done a lot of research on this, actually, because Eastern Europe is really the big issue now for... I think a lot of it's to do with elections. There's elections coming up, and a lot of leaders of these countries, they really don't want to be kind of totalitarian with their views about vaccination because they want to get re-elected. Do you see what I mean? It's a little bit like the unfortunate timing of the pandemic in the US being the same year as an election year, whereas the campaigning was starting. Trump didn't really want to be distracted from campaigning because he wanted to win the election. And to him, coronavirus was a bit of a distraction. So he gave it 3 months and then he was like, okay, I'm done with this now. Whereas this now is happening, and that obviously had a negative effect on the messaging for coronavirus here. And so that's why the numbers were so high. Whereas in Eastern Europe, exactly the same thing is happening. And we talked about how, I think, when did we do this? Thursday last week, we talked about how the rest of the world, like other leaders, look to America for an example to be set. Riyadh, good morning. Thank you for joining the chat here on Backchannel this morning. It's 8 minutes after 9. You're on the West Coast as well, so our time zones match. And I kind of feel like we're in good company this morning. The World Health Organization, which includes Russia and its European region, on Wednesday reported a 10% rise in COVID deaths in Europe over the previous week, bucking a trend of declines in most other regions. And across the continent, European governments are uneasily eyeing a likely backlash if unpopular measures, such as strict shutdowns again, become widespread, even while weighing possibly dire public health consequences if safety measures are flouted. So, that's the front of the Los Angeles Times this morning. One more story from them. State could be nation's abortion provider. It says, with access to abortion at stake across the US, California is getting ready to become the nation's abortion provider. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom and legislative leaders have asked a group of reproductive health experts to propose policies to bolster the state's abortion infrastructure and prepare it for more patients. I mean, this is the cold, harsh reality of the modern day, isn't it? Of the divided politics, that people are going to have to be leaving Texas and traveling to California to get an abortion in 2021. Remarkable. Rare red foxes eluded Dixie Fire. Oh, that's good, because the Dixie Fire was one of the biggest fires here in California, wildfires. And also a battle over wheelchairs. Lawsuits target shortfall in insurance. So that's how the front of the LA Times is this morning. And by the way, if you are in a region or a state and you would like us to cover the news where you are, if you would like to hear your local newspaper, maybe you don't have access to it. Because not many people read actual physical papers these days. Readership is on the decline. And in fact, Carla and I, the producer, we were discussing this on our WhatsApp the other day, and I looked up to see how many people read some of these papers around the States, and they only print 200,000 copies. That's how many they print, right? So it doesn't mean that's how many people read them. That's how many they print. And it used to be the state, before the internet came along, that everybody would read their local paper, their state newspaper, or, And now really just the big ones, the Washington Post and the LA, well, not the LA, but the New York Times and the, what's the other one? What's the other really big one that's kind of considered a national? It's interesting, isn't it, how kind of New York State newspapers are considered national papers. The New York Times, the Washington Post, And what's the third one that's like a big national paper? LA Times isn't really a national paper, though, is it? It's more of a... I'm sure there's another one that comes out of New York that's considered to be where it's at. Maybe you can remind me. Maybe you can let me know by, maybe you could do exactly that. Riyadh... excuse me, I don't know what happened to me. I just got possessed just then. Oh, Wall Street Journal. Yeah, I think that was it. Wall Street Journal. Thank you, Carla. You see? She has the skills. Sometimes when I lack recall, she can talk in my ear. See, she's like, I'm like a puppet. I'm just a puppet. I'm like Ron Burgundy. Thank you, Riyadh. Yes, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times. Those are like the big nationals, I guess. And but so we've been sniffing around. We like to go local as well. So where should we go next? Let's go to the New York Times next, because it's kind of one of those stories, and it's actually one of the big stories on the New York Times is the one that we're going to talk about earlier or later, which is the firearms kits sold online. Yes. Oh, Ria, do you want the Washington Post, or were you just telling me which was the newspaper that was missing? Well, we'll give you the Washington Post. You're going to get it because, if your wish is our command. I nearly said demand then, and I realized I haven't said this phrase for a long time, not since I was a genie in a pantomime. Oh, you were just coming up with the last one. Thank you. I appreciate that. Firearm kits sold online fuel epidemic of violence is the headline on the New York Times. It says, made with untraceable parts, ghost guns find their way to felons and children. And this is the story we're going to focus on a little bit later. It's a story that's out of Chula Vista here in California. Max Mendoza's parents awakened just after dawn to the echoing clap-pop of a gunshot and ran from their bedroom to find their 12-year-old son propped against the couch, eyes wide in pain, terror, and surprise. And he had a weapon resembling a toy, a cheap-looking brown and black pistol, and it could have ended his life in an instant. So investigators in the city just south of San Diego are still trying to determine exactly what happened on that Saturday morning in July. If the 7th grader accidentally shot himself, or if his 15-year-old friend, who the police say had brought the weapon into the apartment, discharged it while showing it off. I mean, this is, to me, I come from a country where no one has guns. They don't, the criminals are scared of them. There's a few, they come in like underground, but the police don't have them. We have like firearms units. So like if there's an incident that requires police with guns to show up, then they call the special unit, and then they have them. You see them if you walk around London. You see like firearms units parked up, eating McDonald's, just waiting for the call, But they never go on duty unless they get called. They don't even like respond to regular stuff. Like if a criminal is running by and another policeman is chasing, the firearms people, they don't get out of their car and go join in. Nah, this is they're like a serious... The firearms police in England are very serious people. They don't do chasing. You don't run with a gun, right? You just don't. Unless you're in America, of course. Police run. I think also there's this whole issue about police being overweight. Do you know about this story? It's a very interesting thing. So the theory is that if you're a policeman or a police officer, female police officer, and you're fat, you are less likely to run and therefore more likely to discharge your firearm. And there's been studies and statistics on this. Because rather than run and get out of breath and chase somebody, you would rather get your gun out and shoot it to kind of apprehend that person and get out of... And this is why the police have to be fit. Like, it's really important that police are fit and not too old. And I'm not ageist or fattest. We're talking about police. And so this is a very interesting subject for me anyway, because, where I'm from, the police don't have guns. So there's no, and you never ever, in all the sieges or kind of standoffs that have happened that I've seen, always filmed in London, you never see a police officer running with a gun. They're just marksmen. So they get still into position. They allow the regular bobbies on the beat, as we call them, to chase the criminal into the area where the firearms police are. Or members of the public even. Get the public to chase them in, and then so the firearms guys, they just take it very serious. It's a very serious business. But here I go into 7-Eleven and the security guard's got a gun. That's my worry. I'm looking around and like, famously, there's a 7-Eleven near me here. And they recently fired the security guard, I think, because he was a bit drunk. He was a little bit drunk. And he had a gun. And I was like, it's like Russian roulette going to go get yourself some 7-Up. It's Russian roulette. Incidentally, not all 7-Elevens are like this. I just happen to live in a particularly scary part of Hollywood. But it's interesting to me that this concept of like overweight police officers would rather fire their weapon than run, than chase. How do we go about dealing with this in a respectful way? You know, saying to a police officer, you need to eat less and exercise more. Because I wonder if it's the same. I mean, are there requirements? Because, you know, every police force throughout every different state in America has its own rules for application. So it's not like nationwide. I think in England it's nationwide. Like, if you want to be a police officer, you have to be I mean, they used to have a minimum height. And I think that with European rules, I think they might have changed that now. So you can be a very short police officer, and that's fine. But years ago, you had to be at least 5'8", I think, 5'7" or 5'8", to be a police officer. And of course, in England, they have those big helmets that give them at least another 7 or 8 inches on their height. They're all short with these giant... Please don't confuse it with the Queen's Guards, who have the huge fluffy hat. I'm talking about a regular, like, English policeman's helmet. But in America, they tend not to wear headgear, you know, unless there's a riot. So I wonder if there's a minimum height requirement to be a police officer in the US. And if there's a weight limit. You know, a little bit like if you wanted to be an airline steward for stewardess, or what do they call it these days? Cabin crew. You had to be like a certain height and a certain weight. And like in the olden days of TWA, you know, Trans World Airlines, and you know, when these airlines first became popular in the 1960s, they used to weigh women before they could work. And if they were like a pound too heavy to work as an air hostess, they didn't get the job. They were told to go and lose weight. I'm so pleased the world has changed, you know, like I'm so pleased we've evolved. Because I'm definitely like 7 pounds over now for anything. I could never work as cabin crew. Although saying that, I have seen some gigantic cabin crew. But there has to be a requirement to be able to like walk up the aisle fast and evacuate people. I had no idea we were going to be talking about fat people in frontline jobs today. It never occurred to me before this show. And here we are. It's difficult, you know, because everything's so delicious. That's the other problem, isn't it? Everything is so delicious. I took my daughter to a kid's party yesterday, and it was like there was a meal. There was going to be like chicken tenders and French fries, and they did hummus and dips, and that was great. But that came later. Guess what was on the table when they all arrived and sat down? Cinnamon rolls. Hot, sticky cinnamon buns. Hundreds of them on the table. So, of course, all these 6-year-old girls sit down, and they're just like eat up all the hot, yummy Cinnabon-style rolls. And, of course, when it came to eating, like, food, like actual food that wasn't made of pure sugar, they were like, I'm full. Meanwhile, these poor kids were, like, bouncing off the ceiling. I literally had to, like, climb a ladder and, like, remove my daughter from the light fitting. Anyway, she had a great time. But this was like a restaurant. Like, it was on a menu, it was printed on a menu, like starter, cinnamon buns. I was like, really? Unbelievable. Okay, so we're going to go back to that firearms story, talking about these ghost guns a little bit later. If you would like to join in with us, if you'd like to join the chat, then you can just talk to your Echo Show device, say your activation word, followed by the magic word, which is say, and then your message. And if you don't have an Echo Show with a screen and you're just listening to my voice now, good morning, then you are very welcome to use the live chat facility. All you have to do is jump on the website. It's called backchannel.tv, and you can message me there. Tony, thank you for joining the stream this morning. Nice to know you are part of Backchannel. It's 9:20 Pacific. It's 12:20 Eastern, and it's Monday morning, the 15th of November, and tomorrow is my birthday. So hopefully you'll join me here tomorrow for like a birthday party. You know, maybe there'll be a little bit of present opening. Maybe there'll be some kind of decorations in the background, like a balloon or two, some celebration. I mean, it would be remiss of me not to celebrate my own birthday with you, seeing as that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow on my birthday, is hanging out with you. So we might as well make a thing of it. And if you don't have to buy me anything, I just want you to know this in advance. Like, you don't have to buy me anything. If you feel obliged, it's not necessary. You have to buy me anything. But I tell you what I will do. I might lay out a couple of 100 cinnamon buns around here. Some nice cinnamon rolls, nice sugary, just to really get us going tomorrow morning. Crunch at ports spells trouble for U.S. farms on the front of the New York Times this morning. It says it's just 60 miles from El Dorado Dairy in Ontario, California, to the nation's largest container port in Los Angeles. But the farm is having little luck getting its products onto a ship headed for the foreign markets that are crucial to its business. Yes, farm is part of one of the nation's largest cooperatives, California Dairies, which manufactures milk powder for factories in Southeast Asia and Mexico that use it to make candy, baby formula, and other goods. The company typically ships 50 million pounds of its milk powder and butter out of ports each month, but roughly 60% of the company's bookings on outbound vessels have been cancelled or deferred in recent months, resulting in around $45 million in missed revenue per month. Wow, that's a lot of milk powder. Jagged maps tilt key races towards GOP. This is a story also on the front of the New York Times this morning. A year before the polls open in the 2022 midterm elections, Republicans are already poised to flip at least 5 seats in the closely divided House thanks to redrawn district maps that are more distorted, more disjointed, and more gerrymandered than any since the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. The rapidly forming congressional map, a quarter of which has taken shape as districts are redrawn this year, represents an even more extreme warping of American political architecture, with state legislatures in many places moving aggressively to cement their partisan dominance. I mean, gerrymandering is it's an increasing problem, and I think, a lot of these things, by giving them funny names, people don't really get their heads around what they are. Do you know what I mean by that? Because, if it wasn't called gerrymandering, if it was called, moving the boundaries to benefit your party, then people might be like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But gerrymandering sounds like something kind of fun, like Uncle Jerry. Look at Jerry's mandering again. It just seems kind of fun. It's really not fun. I mean, this is like an infringement of your civil liberties. It says the flood of gerrymandering carried out by both parties, but predominantly by Republicans, is likely to leave the country ever more divided by further eroding competitive elections and making representatives more beholden to their party's base. At the same time, Republicans' upper hand in the redistricting process, combined with plunging approval ratings for President Biden and the Democratic Party, provides the party with what could be a nearly insurmountable advantage in the 2022 midterm elections and the next decade of House races. So everybody is saying that the House will flip in 2022 and the Republicans will get the upper hand, which means that, a little bit like Obama's 8 years, Biden just won't be able to get anything through. Nothing. It'll all have to be like executive orders. There'll be no congressional support. It's like, this is modern politics here in America, isn't it? And the downside to this is, it's like, if you think about it, you're supposed to have elected representatives, the right number for the number of people that vote for them in Congress, and therefore the percentage of people in the country get represented equivalently in Congress. Well, with gerrymandering and reboundary and all this stuff, that's not happening. But even with state legislatures, that doesn't really happen either, because they've become politicized. So it just means that there are less and less opportunities for people who vote for a candidate to feel that their views are reflected in Congress and therefore in law. And that really is the fall of democracy. In fact, when people say, oh, democracy looks like it might be on the way out here in America, I'm like, what are you talking about? It already happened. It's the same where I'm from. You know, we in England, they gave us a referendum on changing voting. You know, we have this first past the post system. Well, first past the post is not what it sounds like. It's nothing to do with that. In fact, the thing that they were going to give us the chance to have, which was a referendum on a system called proportional representation, no one voted for it because it was like a rigged question in the referendum. It was rigged. I think the question went like this. Would you like to keep the existing first past the post voting system or switch to the alternative vote? That's what the question was. And that's why no one voted for it. Even though the alternative vote, which shouldn't be called alternative, it should be called proportional because it is proportional. So the names are the wrong way around. And it's the same here. It's not like the person with the most votes wins. That's not how it works in America. It's not how it works in England. It's not how it works in loads of places. They designed it like that for a reason, because it's much easier to kind of manipulate results if it's not the winner wins. You know, it's like lumping districts together, and like California here, I think we have 50 state legislature. I can't remember. I think California has more than any other state. I think we have 50 here, which is because it's the most populous state. You know, there's more people in California than anywhere else. But yeah, it's not democracy. Democracy is a very different. There used to be a thing called democracy. I remember it. And actually, no, I don't remember it. It was probably before I was born. I wonder when, like, the most democratic time was in American history. Was it like just after the Civil Rights Movement? Was it like in the kind of late 60s when the first Voting Rights Act was completed? Do you think that was like the most, that was the moment at which we were like, yeah, okay, this system is fair? And then, of course, the parties started to work out how they could manipulate votes from that point onwards. I don't know. I wasn't here then. I wasn't even born then. But maybe you know. Tony, Riyadh, thank you for joining us. You can do the same. All you have to do is talk to your Echo Show device, introduce yourself, ask it to open Backchannel, and then it'll ask you your name and where you're from, and then you can see me as well as hear me, and you can interact with the show just by saying your activation words, the wake-up word, followed by the magic word, which is say, and then your message. That's how it works. Scant few hold keys to success of climate vow is also on the front of the New York Times this morning. Yes, this is after COP26 is done now. It's over. You know, the deal has been done. And tragically, coal is still part of the plan. That was the last thing to come out of COP26. It was like India going, hello, we can't quite manage without coal. We're a developing nation. And then China says the same, and Russia says the same. And, you know, before you know it, they're all like, let's rewrite the wording. So instead of saying reduce coal or remove coal, I think remove coal was the original word from the text, they change it to pare down. They're just going to pare down coal. Is that enough? It's just not enough. And that's what infrastructure is. Infrastructure is building wind turbines and solar arrays and various, you know, alternative, energy efficient, carbon neutral forms of electricity generation. I just don't get why people aren't on board. This doesn't make sense to me. How many more wildfires and like floods do we need, and hurricanes and like crazy climate incidents for people to be like, yeah, this is actually already started happening? What do you need? Do you need to be underwater? Is that what it is? You literally need to be like, the water level needs to be to here, and you'd be like, yeah, you know, they were right. They were right. Or maybe it'll be, some people will be like this, and they'll be like, no, I still don't believe it. That's it. We'll never hear or see from them ever again. It's 9:30. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Anthony Davis Show. It says so down here. And welcome to, this is like the little kind of yellow studio where you find me Monday through Friday between 9 and 11 Pacific. Oh, incidentally, you don't know this yet, but Carla doesn't know this either. She's a producer. She's right there. I will be doing this show from the East Coast for a couple of days towards the end of the month. I am going to be traveling. I have to go for a meeting on the East Coast. And so it's the first time I've flown in an airplane for 2 years and 3 months. And I'm terrified of just like being out in public, not of flying, but being out in public. And to try and route myself to Cleveland, Ohio, to be able to attend this meeting and do it at a time that enabled me not to miss an episode of Backchannel required a feat of logistical skill that only a man of my abilities can manage, because I love booking flights. But it took me about 2 weeks to work it out. Because there's not many choices. If you want to fly direct from California to Cleveland, you can go on Spirit. Well, some people question whether that's even an airline at all. But they fly direct, but it's a night flight. And unfortunately, the night flight is so fast, it's like 4.5 hours. You can't sleep on a 4.5 hour night flight. By the time you've got on and got comfortable, then they've taken off, and forget it. I mean, you're going to get, 2.5 hours sleep? Forget it. So, couldn't do that, couldn't fly direct. Oh, I could have flown direct with United. They flew direct, but their times were no good. And they also fly the 737 MAX. And I'm not getting on one of those. So you've basically, your choices are limited. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to change. And then I was looking at getting a night flight and sleeping in New York, like overshooting Cleveland and having like a night a night flight there and then in New York on the morning flight back. It's like, I can't. When am I going to do Backchannel? This is what I've been doing for the last few days, planning it. Anyway, I've worked it out. Going via Minneapolis. I'm leaving in the afternoon after the show, and I'm changing Minneapolis, flying with Delta, and I'm going on a Boeing 757 out, and I love those planes. I call those the pencil planes, the 757. Such a great Boeing aircraft. Might be the last time Boeing made a great aircraft. They haven't made a 757 in about 15 years. And then I'm changing onto a Brazilian aircraft. Yeah, not a Brazilian airline, a Brazilian aircraft, an Embraer E175. Also Delta. And then I'm going to fly that into Cleveland. That's like my route, with like a 90-minute layover. And I get in there at 11:15 p.m. and then I wake up in a hotel the next morning and we'll do this together. So you're going to see me sitting in a Hilton in Cleveland and we're going to have this whole conversation. I'm kind of looking forward to it. It's like we're taking Backchannel on tour. Right? Is this okay with you, Carla? Probably should have asked permission first. Is this time? Because I'm going to be on the East Coast, so the timing is going to be different. It's going to be 3 hours later. Can we still manage that? We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It's going to be easy. So, and then I'll do the same Riyadh says, of course. Thank you, Riyadh. But I ended up paying 3 times more for the flight to enable me to still do the Backchannel show and travel. Because I think the Spirit direct flight was like $250 and I ended up paying $750. Such is life. Yeah, the show's still going to be the same time. The show is the same time. I'll still be on at 9 a.m. Pacific, but I'll just be doing it at 12 p.m. Eastern. Carla's having like time zone insanity right now because she's 8 hours ahead. She's having time zone insanity. Riyadh says the next level thing is doing it from the plane. Well, I'll tell you something. We nearly came to that. I'm down for that because the Wi-Fi on planes is pretty good these days. If you're happy to pay the $20 or whatever the deal is, you know. Some flights, they let you just pay for messaging. You know, so that you pay like $4 and you just get to do texting. No pictures which is a shame because I always like to send a photograph of the snacks to somebody who's as interested as you are. Anyway, I'm a little nervous about flying on aeroplanes. Then on the way back, I'm also on another Embraer 175, it's a little regional jet. Small plane, coronavirus, a little bit nervous, I'll be honest, but I'm boosted now, so it's going to be fine. And then I'm changing in Minneapolis again, and I'm going to take an Airbus A321. Now, I don't know about you, but when I book a flight, I want to know what plane I'm on. And some people blindly book their flights and then they moan that the plane is delayed or has a technical problem and they're stuck in the middle seat at the back. And I'm like, you can mitigate all of this stuff. So choose a plane that's a bit newer, right? If you choose a really old plane, then the chances are it might have a fault and they're going to have to fix it before they go. So you're going to have to sit there and wait. Choose when I booked, they showed me which flights, I think this was on Google Flights, they showed you which flights were more environmentally friendly. So how much CO2 would be emitted from each flight. And so when you book, you get the chance to choose your flight based upon your CO2 emissions, which I think is great. I didn't because I needed to be there at certain times, so I ended up taking one of the least environmentally friendly routes because I'm having to fly further. Anyway, it's not your problem. I appreciate you've got your own problems to worry about. But, I have to think about these things. Logistics are very important to me. My neighbor's coming back today. They've been in Europe for a month, and they were flying on Virgin Atlantic, which is one of my favorite airlines. I'm a bit biased, Richard Branson and all that stuff. And I said, "Oh, you going on the new plane?" Because, they've, for the last year or two, Virgin have been flying a new Airbus A350-1000. Beautiful new plane. And they said, "Oh, no, we specifically chose the Dreamliner. We like the Dreamliner." And I was like, "Why?" And they were like, "Oh, because it's the new plane." I was like, "Yeah, 10 years ago. 10 years ago the Dreamliner came out." And they said, "Oh, we had to get certain dates because they don't fly the Dreamliner very often." I'm like, "I know, because it's not the new plane." And we did actually have a little bit of an argument about it because they were convinced that the Dreamliner was a better plane. And I was like, it really isn't. Do you remember we talked about this the other day about the window blinds? You have to press the button to change the... Yeah, well, it's old tech now. Anyway, I was very jealous of anybody flying on an A350-1000. It's just a lovely new plane. Actually, the nickname for that is the Hushliner because it's so quiet. The Hushliner. So instead of the Dreamliner, because the Dreamliner is actually not that quiet. It is, I think, if you're on the ground and it goes overhead, it's quieter. So it's good for kind of neighbors who moan about, the plane noise. But when you're on it, it's still pretty noisy. And because it has a lot of electrical systems in it, because it's a carbon fiber, it's like a new generation modern aeroplane. I always hear this electrical hum the whole time when I'm on a Dreamliner, which is also called a 787. And I'm like, what is that? It's just the sound that the plane makes. It's a high-pitched hum. Which is why I have invested in a gigantic pair of noise-cancelling headphones. If they pick up the hum, I will not be a happy camper. Let's go back to the New York Times. After 2 weeks of lofty speeches and bitter negotiations among nearly 200 nations, the question of whether the world will make significant progress to slow global warming still comes down to the actions of a handful of powerful nations that remain at odds over how best to address climate change. The United Nations Global Conference on Climate Change closed on Saturday with a hard-fought agreement that calls on countries to return next year with stronger emissions reduction targets and promises to double the money available to help countries cope with the effects of global warming. It also mentions by name, for the first time in a quarter century of global climate negotiations, the main cause of climate change: fossil fuels. Does it not surprise you that they haven't named fossil fuels as the main cause of climate change previously? It does me. I'm like, really? I don't know. You hear the story about Shell yesterday. What a great story. Well, Shell is known as Royal Dutch Shell. That's its full name. And it's headquartered in the Netherlands. So the courts in the Netherlands they've effectively sued Shell to reduce their climate emissions. They're basically blaming Shell as a fossil fuel producer for the climate crisis. The Netherlands is a very forward-thinking nation. And do you know how Shell have responded? They're going to shut down their operations in the Netherlands. They're just going to be called Shell. They're not going to be called Royal Dutch Shell anymore. They're off. They're like, we're off. And you know what the thing that's so offensive about this is? Is that they've claimed that the reason that they are changing their name and leaving the Netherlands is because this is all part of their going green movement. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. It's crazy. It's a very interesting story. It's the first time in the world that a court has actually taken on one of these energy companies and basically blamed them for the climate crisis. I think it's rather brilliant. And I would like to see other courts taking on all of the other fossil fuel, producers, those that are mining oil and those that are making gas and those that are profiting. Because I wouldn't mind if they were all, ExxonMobil, which I think is based in the UK, is the richest company in the UK. They make more profit than any other company in the UK. And what do they make? Gas. So it's so profitable. It's so profitable. Sorry, Carla, what was that? I missed that. Oh, Shell's HQ is in Texas. Or Exxon. ExxonMobil is based in Texas. Yes, Texas is, of course, the oil state, isn't it? But as a British company, it's the most profitable company in the UK. You see? I think, this is from my memory, so I might be a little wrong. Arms sales, there's a company called BAE Systems that make arms, and Exxon are the two biggest companies in the UK. Climate change and war. That's just how it is. That's the world we're living in. And I don't really see it changing anytime soon. Wouldn't it be nice? Am I right, Carla? Are you looking it up? Am I right? Those are the two most profitable companies. I would just love it if they turned around and said, you know what the most profitable shop is, or retailer or company in the world is? Wouldn't it be great if it was an electric car company that made its parts all of recycled materials? Tesla obviously is doing very well, but it's not the biggest car company in the world. It's getting there, but it's not quite there. But also, how much of Tesla's materials are recyclable or renewable? It's very interesting to me. I know they have huge solar farms in order to power these gigafactories. The car that I drive was built in a carbon-neutral factory. I'm not preaching here, by the way. I'm just telling you. I didn't build the car. I just bought the car, secondhand. But the car that I drive was built in a carbon-neutral factory out of 70% recyclable materials. So the car can be recycled. Isn't it great? There's no steel. There's carbon fiber. The car has a carbon fiber frame. But all of the touch materials inside the car are made of recycled bottles and newspapers and stuff. The car feels like you're in a recycled trash can. It's nice, it's nice, and I did that on purpose. For 5 years I've driven a car that is recyclable and energy efficient because it's battery operated, and we can do that, and you can buy them. I see this car on the used market for around $9,000 or $10,000. They're not that expensive. Used, There's a whole thing now about buying used electric cars, because obviously there weren't enough on the market before, so people couldn't really consider it. But if you think about it, All of the things that can go wrong on a regular car don't go wrong with electric cars. So you can actually buy an electric car that is secondhand with full confidence that it's going to work. The battery might be degraded, so the range might be affected, but in terms of like the bits, nothing's going to go wrong because it hasn't got an engine or a transmission or water or oil or any of the things that you put in a car. You know, like the car's leaking oil? Do you remember those days? Not my car. Remember the car's overheating and like the radiator steaming? Not my car. This is how it is now. It's just like a go-kart. It's just stop and go, forward and back. Simple. Okay, let's see. Oh, should we do the Washington Post specifically for Riyadh? Because we talked about that earlier, didn't we? Here we go. Let's see what's on the front of the WAPO this morning. It's 9:46, by the way. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis, the Anthony Davis Show. But you guessed that already because it says it right there. On the front of the Washington Post, Biden team plays down problems and draws fire. Yes, it says in June, senior White House officials promised that rising inflation was just transitory. In July, Biden declared that the virus is on the run. And in August, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki declared the president continues to believe that it is not inevitable that the Taliban take over Afghanistan. But in just the past week, inflation hit a 31-year high as prices rose 6.2% over a year ago. Coronavirus cases are ticking up again. And the United States announced that Qatar will serve as its diplomatic proxy in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Headwinds that come as the Democratic Party reels from a set of unexpected losses in elections around the country. In these and other cases, a growing number of Democrats worry that the White House has repeatedly underestimated the scale of the challenges facing the country, exacerbating the party's political problems and making its already perilous path to holding Congress in 2022 even more difficult. And they acknowledge the problems presented by the unpredictable nature of the pandemic and even economic recovery, but fear that the administration's tendency to play down the issues has only made things worse. I mean, I kind of agree with this, because, you know, these days, if you're going to do anything in politics, you have to shout about it. You can't do it quietly. You know, you can't just get on with the job, which is what Biden does. It's like, I'm just getting on with the job. It's like, no, Mr. Biden. Press conference. Tell us everything. Tell us what you've been doing. Tell us what Kamala's been doing. Because Kamala Harris has been like flat out, right? She's taking on a lot of work in addition to doing everything with him and making every decision with him. She needs to be making a press conference every week. I want to know what they're doing. I want it to go far and wide. I will never tire of press conferences. Just keep them short. 30 minutes tops. And take questions. Take questions. That's how you run a modern democracy, is that you communicate everything. Tell us everything that you're doing. Even the little things that you don't think we care about. Tell us about those as well. I mean, it almost makes me want to run for president, but I can't because I'm not a US citizen. That's the one prerequisite of being a candidate for. But my son, who is a US citizen, could. My brother, who is a US citizen, could. Oh, actually, no, wait a minute. Do you have to be born here? Maybe you don't just have to be a US citizen. I think you have to have been born here. I think you have to have been born in America. So my son was born in America. So he could be, in fact, he's totally going to be the president. You should see the way he builds Lego. That guy, infrastructure, he's got it down. He's 3, by the way. So it won't be happening anytime soon. I think you maybe have to be born in the US. I don't know that you could have acquired a passport through naturalization. Correct me if I'm wrong. You can tell me by joining the chat. Just go to backchannel.tv and you can type away there. It appears on my screen. Or you could talk to your Echo device. Just say your activation word, your wake-up word, followed by say, followed by your message. Do you have to have been born? Because that's why there was all that controversy with Obama when Trump was pretending that Obama wasn't American because he was born in Hawaii and because Trump didn't realize that Hawaii was America. Do you remember? Birtherism. Unbelievable. So I think it's about your birthplace as opposed to your acquired citizenship. Am I right, Carla? Have you looked it up? Yeah, you have to be a natural-born citizen. You can't have been naturalized. So we can breathe a sigh of relief that my brother will never become the president of the United States. Trust me. We don't want that. We'll all be like too chill, and we'll be like eating out every night. Yeah, that's right. This is why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is totally going to be a future president, this is why she can't apply yet. It's because she's too young. She's like 33 or something, isn't she? AOC, I think she's 33. But I love her Bronxy accent. To me, that's like one of the 32. She's 32. There you go. I love her Bronxy accent, and that's why I partly want her to be the president of the United States, because I just want to hear the Bronxy accent doing the press conferences. Because I think it's like no messing, no nonsense. Okay, also on the front of the New York Times, inflation becomes Biden's top test. America is emerging from the pandemic facing its not New York Times, sorry, we're on the Washington Post now. America is emerging from the pandemic facing its biggest inflationary spike in decades, as startling and persistent price hikes threaten to undermine the recovery while posing an entirely new kind of economic challenge to the Biden presidency. It says policymakers are facing devilish and unfamiliar quandary of booming consumer demand and dramatic supply disruptions, combining to push higher the cost of necessities such as food. I was about to read the word food and gas, and some food and gas repeated on me as I was reading those two words. This is what a live show is all about. I saw the words food and gas coming up, and I was like, I'm going to burp. Food, gas, and housing is the rest of the sentence. Just in case you're playing buzzword bingo and you wanted to know what the third word was, it was housing. 10 points. The more than 6% jump in prices recorded in October relative to last year has strained the budgets of millions of American families. It's complicated investment decisions for businesses across the country, and it's created major political challenges for the White House. I'm telling you, they just need to talk to us more. This is all it is. I mean, you remember like Trump, when he started, was doing press conferences all the time because he loved the audience. And then when the pandemic started, he was like, okay, I'm done. And then there was no press conferences. There was none. Well, and I was saying this the other day about having a climate czar. We really need like a climate press conference in addition to a kind of White House press conference. We need to be told what changes we need to make in our daily lives in order to reduce carbon emissions. And that should absolutely be happening. And just because I'm a man of my word, I did actually send a tweet to the Energy Secretary at the White House in Washington, saying, please can you do a weekly press conference? And she hasn't replied. Surprise, surprise. But I think it's a very good idea. And if she's not prepared to do it, I'll do it. Just tell me what to say and I'll go and say it. And then I'll take some questions. Because if we're serious about this, we need to I just worry that the next climate conference is going to be in Russia. The next kind of COP26, I think it's going to be maybe Turkey. Maybe it's going to be in Turkey. Anyway, it's going to be happening the same week. Something massive is happening that week. Oh, that's right. Isn't it like the next election? Isn't it like the next presidential election? The same week as the next climate conference. I think that's what it is. In 4 years' time. 3 years' time. But there's like a major clash. And they did not think this through. After Texas abortion law need for help has grown. Also on the front of the WAPO this morning, it says non-profit aiding women post-pregnancy sees more clients and less funding. What else do we have here? The ring in the ashes. In California, FEMA's billion-dollar program to prevent disasters failed to save Mount Olive Road. That's off of the back of one of these crazy California wildfires. And finally, fading hope in South Sudan. World's youngest country is at a crossroads, but global attention is turning elsewhere, it says. The night after... Oh, this is Bentiu in South Sudan. The night after he watched government allied forces burn his village to the ground, he gathered his family and started walking north. He'd heard the UN base was offering protection in a civil war. Hi, Liz. Thank you for joining Backchannel. I'm Anthony. Nice to meet you. It's very funny. Thank you, Carla. This is like we've got a whole system now. When someone new joins the chat, Carla likes to get my attention in case I'm looking down and reading. And the way she does that is she basically leaps into the air like an acrobat. And it works. I mean, the system works. Because then I look up because I can see her, right? She like leaps into the air and I'm like, whoa, are you all right, Carla? One time she'll leap so high because Liz will join us tomorrow or something that just her legs will be in the picture and her head will like be through a hole in the ceiling. What was that great film where everything collapsed in the house? The Money Pit. Do you remember that movie? I think it was a Tom Hanks film from like 1982. What a great film. Liz, if you're listening to us on your speaker and you would like to chat to us, to join in, well, you can do that from Nevada. All you have to do is open your phone's web browser or your laptop's web browser or your computer's web browser, type in backchannel.tv, and then the live web chat will appear. You can message me, instead of me just talking to you, Liz, and you want to talk back to me, backchannel.tv is the website. So there we are. That's the front of the Washington Post. We were doing that one specifically for Riyadh. And if you yourself are somebody who has maybe got a local newspaper that you're kind of interested in me reading or reviewing, then just let me know and we'll just do it. Your wish is my command. Got it right that time. So what else were we going to do? I think New York Times we kind of did. But I think we're going to go back to a story there about these ghost guns. It's quite important, kind of big story. Oh no, hang on, we've got a couple more. We've got the Dayton Daily News. This is in Ohio. This is where I'm actually going. I'm not going to Dayton, Ohio. I'm going to Cleveland. But Ohio, it's all the same. It's a big state over there, not quite on the East Coast, almost, where the Great Lakes are. The Dayton Daily News leads with infrastructure bill makes Ohio rail line possible, but issues remain, it says. Local leaders who want passenger rail service connecting Dayton to some of Ohio's other largest cities say passage of the bipartisan federal infrastructure bill was a big step towards making that happen. But although the legislation will provide billions of dollars for rail projects, much of the funding is competitive, and officials say they do not know how Ohio's proposal will stack up against projects in other places. Also, business district to get a new name and a new look, entry signs, multiple traffic changes, and more planned for 2023. You see, this is what we're going to start to see off the back of the infrastructure bill, is you're going to see on your local newspaper stories about change, new stuff happening. It's kind of amazing. I mean, I know a lot of this has been in the plan for a long time, but the money's got to come from somewhere, right? Anyway, CDC shifts goal away from herd immunity. Since the earliest days of the pandemic, there's been one collective goal for bringing it all to an end, achieving herd immunity. That's when so many people are immune to a virus that it runs out of potential hosts to infect, causing an outbreak to sputter out. Well, it says many Americans embrace the novel farmyard phrase, and with it, the projection that once 70% to 80 or 85% of the population was vaccinated against COVID-19, the virus would go away and the pandemic would be over. Except, now the herd is restless. And experts at the CDC have set aside herd immunity as a national goal. They say the prospects for meeting a clear herd immunity target are very complicated, thinking that we'll be able to achieve some kind of threshold where there'll be no more pandemic. Oh, continues on page 4. Yet again, I have been foiled by the front pages. I don't have page 4. But if you're interested, I'm sure that you can ask. It's Dr. Jefferson Jones, a medical officer on the CDC's COVID-19 Epidemiological Task Force. Ask him. Ask Jefferson. Ask Jeff. Because I don't know. I'm out. Anyway, that's the Dayton Daily News. I mean, I said this ages ago. In fact, one of the mums at my daughter's school said to me, because she knows that I do the news, and so she's always asking me for my opinion, like I know anything. And she's like, when the pandemic first was announced, when it first started back in like February, March, when it really started to kind of be taken seriously before it kind of had already got everywhere. She said, how long is this going to last? What, like a month? 2 months? And I went, 2 years. And she was like, what? And I was like, 2 years. Minimum. And she was like, you think so? And I was like, yeah. It's a worldwide pandemic. 2 years. The modeling has been done for years. Like, they know how long it takes. And the timing it takes to develop vaccines, the timing it takes to get everybody vaccinated, the time it takes for this whole thing to kind of coming at 2 years. Which means we have another 2 months before it's 2 years. And, I mean, arguably, it's 2 years now because they reckon that the virus escaped the wet market in Wuhan around November, December time of 2019, right? So arguably, it's 2 years now. But it was March before the lockdown happened here in California, March the 12th. I'll never forget it. That was when the lockdown happened. And we stockpiled goods, and you couldn't get hand sanitizer anywhere. And it was like the world was literally ending, because people didn't know. Nobody really knew what was happening. And then, of course, now we've learned to live with it. So we're in a whole new phase. And I'm telling you, it ain't going to go away. Like, this is it now. We take precautions. We wear masks on planes. And, in shops, like, this is going to be just normal. And I don't really have a problem with that. Do you remember years ago when, was it HN1 or Ebola or something? But what was it? You used to see, like, pictures of people in Japan wearing masks. I mean, or was that just pollution? Was that just, like, pollution in Japan, the reason they all wore masks all the time? It wasn't even a virus. And it was just quite normal. And I remember being in London and you'd see Japanese tourists coming to London and they'd still have their masks on. And you'd be like, what are you wearing a mask for? They knew. They knew. Right? They knew. So, like, culturally, the mask is just normal. It's just normal. I feel a bit weird if I'm not wearing one. I actually quite like covering up this face. This is the type of face that needs to be covered up. Now, if you are very good looking, if you're a very, very good looking person, I understand it might be a problem to wear a mask because you want everybody to see what you have to offer. But if you're like a 7, a 6 or a 7, cover it up. The government should give a threshold for like the good for good lookingness, shouldn't they? They'd be like, if you're above an 8, you don't have to wear a mask. But if you're a 7 or below, cover it up. Do you ever think about like what grade you are? Do you ever think about that? Because I think about this a lot. I think about the fact that even ugly people can dress up to go out on a Saturday night and look in the mirror and go, yes, indeed. Looking good. That's like how humanity has created us. It's a bit like an ugly baby. Like if an ugly baby is born, the parents are still like, she's so cute. And I'm like, it's an ugly baby. It's got like a huge head and fangs and claws. That's an ugly baby. And yet the parents, all they see is beauty. That's what they see. So do you ever think about like what number you are? Because I mean, this is a very interesting conversation. This is not a conversation we should be having, because we're asking to be like critical of our own humanity. I'm really thinking about whether we should be having this conversation now. What number are you? Are you above a 6? I mean, we could make a rule on the show that it's like 5s and over. Because, I mean, this really is, at the heart of this, at the nucleus of this conversation is narcissism, right? We have to be a little narcissistic. We have to have an ego. Like in my job, like you have to have an ego. You have to, because it creates an armor. It protects you from criticism. And if people say, oh, I don't have an ego, it's like, yeah, you do. I have a massive ego, but it's controlled. It's controlled because I have to live with it. I have to live with myself. You try living with this. But the ego is protection in an industry where you are criticized. If you work in the public eye, you have to be, imagine what, people like, I don't know who to use as an example, Britney Spears. I mean, I don't really know anything about popular culture, to be honest. But like, if nasty stuff is said about you in the public arena, then you need to have a thick skin. And that's what an ego is. It's like protection. It's just armor from the rest of the human race who've taken it upon themselves to dislike you. I find it fascinating. But that begs the question, like, what number are you? I on a good day, I can be like an 8. But on a bad day, I'm like a 4.5. Do you ever think about what number you are? Do you even ever have that conversation? Be like, oh, I'm dating someone and they're a 10. Thing is, what you see as a 10 might be someone else's 7. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, this is why parents looking at an ugly baby can fall in love with it. I was a very ugly baby. I mean, my mum took one look at me and she was like, can you put it back? She was like hoping that there'd be some kind of part exchange service. She was already like logging on to Dr. Bernardo's website in the 70s. We're going to move on. I've been given instruction that it's enough now. Okay, let's have a look here. I'm just looking at what's next because we've got a whole list of great things to do. Okay, so we've done the newspapers. Now, should we talk about public transport a little bit? Because it's kind of a big story. I'm kind of interested in this. Talking about, in England we call it public transport, but in America it's called public transit. Transit. Very difficult. Not difficult. Different is the word I'm looking for. It's like a different word. Public transit. And, we were looking at the rail infrastructure in Ohio and how, that's hopefully going to get a boost off the back of this infrastructure bill. So I just wondered, because it's very hard here in California, public transit is minimal. The bus service is minimal. People wait for a bus a long time. There's not a lot of buses. But it's not just that. It's like the size of the city means that it's very difficult to get around on public transit. And the rail line, I mean, I've taken the subway here in Los Angeles to go downtown, and it's a little bit like the US subway, the New York subway, not US subway. It's kind of similar. You know what the difference between the LA subway and the New York subway is? People. There's no people. There's no people on the LA subway. There's like 6 people on the whole train. Whereas on the New York subway, especially in rush hour, you cannot move. Same in London. Just can't move. And have you seen like people getting on trains in Japan on like the subway train? They have guards to push people on so they can shut the doors. Have you seen this? They have guards whose job it is to heave people into a carriage. I mean, and they put up with that. Like to them, that's normal. If someone like heaved me into a carriage so I can like be smushed up against some stranger, I'd be like, something? I'll walk. Or maybe I'll quit that job and get another job that doesn't rely on putting up with this every single day. What do we put? The stuff we put up with. I mean, veal calves get a better deal in transit than humans in some places. You know, there's a requirement on how much space they deserve when they're being delivered, and yet humans can be delivered in the most horrific condition. There was a report done about the London Underground service, the subway in London. There was a report done about 10 years ago. And it was about how it's so uncomfortable to travel in rush hour. There's so many people. You sometimes have to let a couple of trains go by before you can get on one. The report talked about how travelers shut down. They physically shut down because of their personal space. And I didn't really know that humans were capable of this, but apparently we are. We can go into low power mode, where our senses are reduced, our sense of smell and sound and we can shut ourselves into this minimal mode. And the report that came from the mayor's office about 10 years ago described the shutdown that humans are doing on the London Underground, just so they can get to work without being too vexed. Because if you take everything on about your surroundings when you are being shunted into a carriage and you're like that small and you're holding on to strangers and leaning on strangers, someone's armpits in your face, or you can't live like that. Like, it's inhumane. And so Londoners had taken it upon themselves subconsciously to shut themselves down so that they could put up with it. And I remember reading this study about 10 years ago, and I was like, wow. It is amazing what we're prepared to put up with just to kind of live our lives and go about our day using public transit and sharing space with strangers. And the tragedy is that, when a pandemic comes along, of course, how do you continue doing that? I mean, that's why people working from home it's one of the great things to come out of this pandemic, is the fact that you can now work from home and it's legitimate. And your bosses trust you to work. And in fact, there's been a study about people working from home to say they're doing more hours now. Because if you take out the commute time, the travel time, people are always in front of their computer. People are always on the end of the phone. And so bedtime and these times are irrelevant. Like, if your boss needs you, then they get in touch. I mean, a lot has changed. Which state in the US is the best at public transit, would you say? Is it New York? I mean, they still rely on yellow taxis a lot. And of course, Uber has revolutionized so many cities. But even since the pandemic, that's gone up the Swanee as well, because there's a shortage of drivers. And so that whole business model seems to have changed. Liz, any idea? Riyadh, any idea? Where in the world has the best transit? Where in the US has the best transit? Maybe that's a contradiction. Maybe there's no such thing as good transit in the US. Maybe the US is like, just get a nice car. Drive yourself. When I lived in London, I always drove. I get a bit claustrophobic in the subway. I had a few panic attacks, so I'm not doing that anymore. So I had a car. I just drove everywhere. And it's difficult to park, you end up just like taking a risk. But at least you're in your own space, like in here, I'm sitting here talking to you in my comfort zone. Look, see how comfortable this is? You can literally fall asleep against the wall. This is my comfort zone. But it's the same in our cars, and cars have become home offices now. People have all their equipment, they have their little mounts for their phones so they can do their FaceTime calls or their Zoom calls while they're zooming along the freeway at 65 miles an hour. Then they can zoom while they zoom. That's how it is now. It's like, I mean, years ago, do you remember, like, the only people that really drove for a living, apart from truck drivers, were like reps, representatives who were like selling goods, traveling salesmen. They had an estate car or a station wagon, and they'd have all the shower curtain rings in the back, and they'd be on the road for days selling stuff. It's just not like that anymore. The internet has meant that this whole existence is just different now. So, do you take public transit? And is it part of your work, or have you had to give it up because of the pandemic? And we're asking which state in the US has got the best, or maybe the worst, public transit. And is public transport the answer to America's pollution problems? Is that the solution? You know, years ago, in London, the red bus is like a very famous thing, isn't it? The London red bus. When they first came out, you know, around the turn of the century, the early 1900s, they were all electric. They were electric. They were called trolley buses, and they had overhead power cables, and they basically they had no emissions, zero emissions. People used to get electrocuted quite regularly with the trolley bus, though, because sometimes the top bit would come off the electrical line, so they would have a stick with a hook on it. And invariably this job was given to females. This is true. They would have to hook the trolley back onto the wiring if it came off. And I don't know why women were given that job more than men. Men worked as conductors, you know, they would be on the trolley bus, but women invariably would hook it back on. And there was a lot of there's a lot of accidental electrocutions. I shouldn't be laughing. It's really not very funny. A lot of people died doing that job. But what I find fascinating is then around like the 1930s, when the combustion engine was invented, 1920s, 1930s, the combustion engine was invented. Or was it the 40s? No, maybe it was the 30s. The buses got converted to gas and diesel. So we already had pollution-free public transit in the turn of the century in 1910. If you watch silent movies and you see like Charlie Chaplin chasing, you know, in the late 10s, early 20s, see him chasing for a bus. That wasn't a combustion engine bus. That was an electric bus. It had overhead electric cables. There was no pollution. I mean, the pollution actually came from coal fires that people had in their houses because they had no central air or radiators or anything. So the pollution then was actually caused by people burning fuel in their own homes. But in terms of public transit putting out fossil fuel and contributing to climate change, didn't happen. And it was only when the combustion engine was invented and then oil producers, the big oil producers, started to make petrol for cars and diesel for cars and buses, was there a kind of lobby against going electric. So electric cars are not new. The electric car was invented 100 years ago, and the hybrid vehicle was invented about 35 years ago. And so why are we still just trying to kind of take this stuff on now? Being like, oh, should I get a hybrid car? It's like, it's been around for 35 years you could have had a hybrid car. What have you been waiting for? We're obsessed with burning fossil fuel. Well, it's an addiction. We're obsessed with it. I don't think that public transit is the answer, you know, mass transit. I don't think that's the answer to climate change. In some cities it is. You know, in London they do that. It's a big thing. They make it very difficult for you to drive a car. They have a low emission zone. You have to pay £20 a day to drive into the centre of London. That you can't park anywhere. Like, they've made it really difficult to drive in London. Here in LA, do what you like. Drive where you like. Park where you like. Do whatever you like. I was thinking today, you know, they have a thing called a smog test here in Los Angeles, where you have to check your car's emissions once a year. You have to get a smog test certificate to make sure that your catalytic converter is reducing the emissions to the right amount to protect the climate, right? That's the thing. But what they don't have here is the thing that we have in England called an MOT, which emissions is part of an MOT, which is a motoring certificate to say that your car is roadworthy. They don't have that here. They just want to know that your emissions are roadworthy. You could be driving a car that is falling apart, like has like got no front wing. It's got like the seats are missing, the roof's come off, it's caught fire so many times. It's a bit like the car in planes, trains, and automobiles, you know, where it like finally gives out, the doors fall off. In California, it's completely acceptable to drive a car that is in that bad condition, as long as you got your smog test certificate. There doesn't seem to be any requirement to have a car in good condition here. I'm amazed at that. Just completely amazing to me. Anyway, maybe you changed your habits. Maybe you used to take public transit, and then when COVID happened, you were like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm done with that. I'm just going to drive or stay home. Never go out. And why is public transit usage in the US dropping? Why are there fewer and fewer people doing it? I mean, I used Google Maps the other day to plan a route to LAX, right? Because I have to go to the airport next a couple of weeks' time. And I was thinking about, should I take a bus, or they have a thing called the flyaway bus, which is, it's like $7 and it takes you all the way there, but I would have to get to the stop. And so that takes like nearly 2 hours, and I could drive there in like 40 minutes, 30 minutes even on a good day. And it occurred to me that driving is always easiest in America. It's like, because they're trying to get a train that goes from LA to San Francisco. They've been talking about building this high-speed rail from LA to San Francisco for ages. And I think they're working on it. I think it's kind of getting the go-ahead. But I don't think anyone's going to go on it. They have this in England as well, like a high-speed rail train that they're trying to build, from the centre of London to Scotland and whatever. It's actually now going to stop at like Liverpool or something. They're not going to go all the way up. And it occurred to me that they already have trains that do this. Why would they spend like billions and billions just to make the journey time 20 minutes faster? And so my solution to this, which is something that they could do here in the US as well, is put high-speed broadband on the trains, so that you were guaranteed that you could be more productive while you were traveling. Because their argument was that you'll be more productive if you get there 20 minutes faster, and therefore that will help the economy. And I'm like, no. What's this obsession with getting everywhere quicker? What is this obsession with being faster to your destination? Hi, Rain, by the way. Thank you for joining us. If you're listening on your Echo speaker, then all you have to do is go to backchannel.tv on a web browser, and you can chat. You can just type your message to me and be part of us. Leon, thank you for joining us as well. Leon, same for you in Missouri. Rain, I'm not sure where you are, but Leon's in Missouri, and if you would like to chat to the show, I'm Anthony. This is Backchannel. Then you just go to a web browser, type in backchannel.tv, and there's no need to register or anything. It just works. So you can message me and you can be part of this conversation. But I'm kind of asking the question, what is this obsession with getting everywhere faster? Why spend billions on a rail network just to get to a destination, in this case, Liverpool? Why would you get to Liverpool 20 minutes quicker? Is it worth like billions and billions to do that? Or even from LA to San Francisco on a high-speed rail? Just use the existing trains and put high-speed broadband on them. It's going to be much cheaper. And then you can effectively do your work whilst you're sitting on the train without fear of like going into a tunnel and losing signal because it's like fitted in the train. I really think high-speed internet is the answer to a lot of problems. Rain, are you a public transport user? Leon, maybe? Or Liz? Anybody who's on our chat with us this morning here on Backchannel, think about these questions and maybe join in with us. Some very interesting stories here that connect to this very subject. The Verge has got a story this morning about public transportation can save the world if we let it. It's not whether public transportation can survive COVID, it's whether we can survive without public transportation. That's how the story goes. I kind of feel like it's not one thing or the other. Like it has to be both, doesn't it? Like you have to have good public transport options, but also a nice electric car sitting in the driveway. My electric car has a limited range. If I want to go far, I would have to rent a car. It's not quite there yet for me, but, maybe you've got a system worked out. All right, let's see what else we have here on our... there's actually another reference to... what is this? I don't think I've ever read from this publication before. Scott Scoop. It's an opinion piece by Kol Yoshida, who says, America used to be a world leader in public transit systems. Now, in a country ruled by cars, these systems have fallen from grace. In the Bay Area, we have 3 main modes of public transit: BART, Caltrain, and the bus system. The one thing they all have in common is that they're not that helpful. I love that. Thus, we all need cars to go about our daily lives. In fact, according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, 86% of Americans commute by car. Only 5% use public transit. And this means that cars are the second biggest expenditure by Americans, beating only by housing. Despite this lack of public transit use, Americans can improve and reform transportation systems with more budgeting. It's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, and then they go on to talk about, the changes amid the Industrial Revolution. And I was saying the same thing. Public transit here in the West used to be electric. I see buses now on the streets, and they're not, some of them are hydrogen buses, but some of them are spewing out smoke. So it's no coincidence that we used to have electric buses and now we don't. Like, there was a reason that happened. Follow the money. It's always follow the money. Somebody realized they could get rich making buses and public transit use diesel rather than being electric. It's a bit like Elon Musk's come out with the Cybertruck now, right? Which is like a semi-commercial vehicle which you could use if you are, a truck driver. As in, like, if you have a flatbed truck, you could get an electric version. Ford have just brought out an electric truck. It's the biggest selling truck in the world. In America is this Ford truck, and now there's an electric version for you to choose from. It's all about emissions, you see. They announced this yesterday on Saturday at the climate conference. They basically admitted that climate change is caused by carbon emissions. It's taken them a while to work that out. I thought they'd already come to that decision, but apparently not. Rain, Leon, Liz, Tony, Riyadh, Will, Billy, so many people on the chat right now. Thank you very much for joining us and for your messages. It's 10:28. Carlo, should we try and do the news at 10:30? Do you think we could do that? Is it going to work? Okay, we're going to try. So I do this podcast as well for the same company. We make this show called US News Update. It's a 2-minute long podcast. You can download it into your iTunes or however you choose to listen to podcasts. And we tried to play it on the show every day for the last week. And we've managed to get like a minute into it and it just stops working. So we're going to try it. We'll try it in like a minute's time, which will be 10:30. And that'll be like a celebration. Just like one of those celebratory moments. I wanted to kind of tell you what else is happening here on Backchannel. Let me just see if it's... is it here on my running order? Talking about who's... I know who's on next, because Hal's on next, but I just wondered if we had the names of everybody else who's on as well. I'll find it. But your pal Hal is on next at 11, by the way. Volley has a growing list of shows. See? Look at that. Haley and Allison live, waking you up in the morning, lots of laughs and their 1-star cinema review. You can get inspired with Liv Harrison, who loves finding out the secret behind people's successes. Or the charming and funny Hal Rudnick, whose program Your Pal Hal directly follows this show at 11 a.m. PST. That's 2 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. 11, 12, 1, 2. Yeah, 2 p.m. Eastern. I've become like king of time zones now. You can ask me any time zone, I'll give you an answer. Cleveland, 3 hours. I don't know how I do it. Okay, it's 10:30. Let's see if we can play US News Update. Here it is. Wish us luck. It's Monday, November 15, from the Volley Network. This is your daily US News Update. I'm Anthony Davis. President Joe Biden named former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu to oversee the implementation of the $1 trillion infrastructure plan, the White House said on Sunday. Landrieu, also a Democratic former Louisiana lieutenant governor, led New Orleans from 2010 through 2018. I don't think it's going to work, is it? I mean, one day we'll work out how to do this. In helping I can hear myself. It's kind of weird. Why do I sound better in that as well? It's like I'm doing my romantic voice. Just trying to romance it up a bit. Trying to make the news sound less depressing. It's 10:31. This is Backchannel. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Anthony Davis Show, Monday through Friday between 9 and 11 Pacific, 12 and 2 Eastern. So reports of teens developing tic-like behaviors after watching TikTok videos highlight something most of us don't consider about mental health. Symptoms can be social. Yes, since March 2020, specialists in the US, Australia, Canada, and the UK have seen a dramatic spike in young patients seeking treatment for tics, according to the Wall Street Journal. Doctors say most of the young people watched content from TikTok creators who say they have Tourette's syndrome, one type of tic disorder. Is there a barcode on the bottom of that? As I drank that, I noticed in the camera that you could scan me if you wanted to. I do like it when... I remember, you ever go to a wedding where the bride and groom have to kneel? You ever been to one of those weddings where they have to kneel to be blessed or something? You're guaranteed to see the barcode on the bottom of their new shoes that they bought just for the wedding. It's like a guarantee that you're going to see a price tag and a barcode on the bottom of the bride and groom shoes. That was always a favorite moment of mine going to weddings. I'd be like, I wonder if I'm going to see the barcode today. So let's talk a little bit, just for a minute, about the effect of social media on young people's mental health. This is a very interesting story. Some researchers have claimed that a sudden surge in TikTok tics is a pandemic within a pandemic. As teens struggle with schoolwork, feelings of isolation, even bruises and other physical marks from their tics. But TikTok isn't creating the distress these teens feel, says pediatric psychologist Alison Libby, an associate clinical professor at the University of California. Instead, the tics are a byproduct of anxiety, depression, and even traumatic stress. And far from dismissing the issues as all in your head, acknowledging how symptoms are shaped by a broader social context and how by social media could help teens find relief for more than just their tics. Hi, Chanel. Thank you for joining us. Where are you, Chanel? Does it say? Doesn't say. But I'd love to know where you're from. If you're listening and you're not watching, of course, you can see me if you've got an Echo Show device or even YouTube. You know, we have a YouTube channel. So if you just search my name, Anthony Davis, and the word Backchannel on YouTube, you'll get the stream and you can watch this show as well as listen to it. But if you're watching on an Echo Show device, just say the activation word, followed by say, and then your message. And you can join in and take part in this conversation. So what measures can we take to ensure that kids are okay on social media? Limiting time, overseeing what they consume, talking to them about what they're watching. As parents, what can we do? Because, my daughter is 6 and she has an iPad and it's not got anything. I don't let her have a web browser on there. And I took off YouTube Kids. There's a YouTube app for kids. Well, that thing is really not very well curated. She ended up watching for hours and hours of adults playing with children's toys. They bought the toys and they'd set up a scene and they were playing with them. Hi, Joy. Thank you for joining us here on Backchannel. Nice to know that you're part of today's program. You're in California. It's 25 to 11. You're a little late, if you don't mind me saying. Tomorrow, it's my birthday. And I'd like to invite all of you, Joy, Chanel, Rain, Leon, Liz, Tony, Riyadh, Will, Lorraine, anybody who's on the chat with us today. I am inviting you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp Pacific, noon Eastern. I'm inviting you to join my birthday party here on Backchannel. It's just a small affair. We're going to have some cinnamon buns, a few cinnamon rolls. Maybe you could make or buy some in the meantime and have them at your place so that we're all ingesting the same levels of sugar. So that my crazy town behavior will match yours. That's what's happening tomorrow, 9 a.m. Birthday party. Be there. Welcome back, Lorraine. Nice to know you're here. Lorraine, I know that you're listening on a speaker device without a camera, or without a picture. So I wondered if you'd logged on to our YouTube channel to see the pictures, and if you're using our web chat facility. Of course, that's a very easy way to communicate. You just go to backchannel.tv on the website, and that's how you can message us. There's no login. You literally just put in your name, where you're from, and you can communicate with the show as easily, almost as easily as talking to your Echo Show device. Because that's the whole point of Backchannel, is that it is a hands-free entertainment. You can talk back chat, and there's no typing, there's no texting. It's just a kind of, interactive thing with the voice. Very simple. Okay, let's... I just lost Carla, so I'm just going to try and get her back. Carla's producing this program, by the way. You'd never believe it, would you? But she is. You'd never know that all of the stuff that's coming out of my mouth is appearing by magic through the technology. It's 10:37. Been asking this morning what measures we can take to ensure kids are okay on social media. Do we limit time? Do we oversee what they consume? Do we talk to them about what they're watching? And what can we do as parents? These tics that some kids have now presented have come as a result of them watching people with Tourette's on TikTok videos. I mean, the irony is that TikTok is called TikTok, and we're talking about people now developing tics. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. I actually feel like we already are living in the metaverse. Like, we've already created a technical space for ourselves now, where we're living in a place that is just, it's unrecognizable from the world that I grew up in as a kid, where we would climb a tree or play with a cardboard box for 7 hours. Seriously, my mum would get a cardboard box and she'd give it to me and my brother, and we would play with it for hours. We would paint it and turn it into a spaceship, climb inside it, and we'd be talking and creating and being interactive with each other and with other humans. And now it's like there are some downsides to technology if you're a kid on your own. Do you think it prevents us or stunts our ability to grow as humans? It's all happening, isn't it? It's all happening. Just 15 minutes left of this show here on Backchannel. Then your pal Hal will be here, Hal Rudnick, who I think is in California. I think he might be in Los Angeles. I was guessing that he was in New York because he kind of was very laid back. He likes to recline in his chair, which is not something I'm able to do. I'm far too much of a control freak for that. But I was watching Hal the other day, and he is very, very relaxed. And I was thinking, whatever he's taking, I would like some of that. It's the 15th of November, Monday morning. Welcome to Backchannel. And we'll also, in the last 15 minutes, we're going to talk about a Lebanese-American author and artist, Etel Adnan, who's died at the age of 96. Her novel about a kidnapping in Lebanon has become a classic of war literature. She was in her 80s when her art started to draw attention on the international stage. So I thought we'd look at this obituary from a kind of creative perspective. The magazine Wallpaper's done a really interesting piece on her. It says, "We remember Etel Adnan, writer, artist, and pioneer in Arab-American culture, who's died in Paris, aged 96. The acclaimed writer, trailblazing artist, and pioneer in Arab-American culture Born in 1925 in Beirut, Lebanon, to a Greek mother and a Syrian father, Etal started painting in the early 1960s after studying philosophy at the Sorbonne in Paris. She moved to America in 1955 to pursue her education at University of California, Berkeley, and Harvard. And 3 years later, she settled in California to teach philosophy of art and aesthetics at the Dominican University of California. She wrote essays, articles, novels, poetry, and plays in various languages, including French, Arabic, and English. I do love anybody that is bilingual or multilingual. I find it... I'm jealous. I mean, I can speak British English and American English, so that's two. Yeah, I know. Adnan rose to prominence in 1977 with Sit Marie Rose, a novel set before and during the 1975 to 1990 Lebanese Civil War, considered as one of the key examples of war literature. And when the Algerian War exploded, Adnan made a conscious decision to stop writing in French and identified painting as an alternative channel for communication. Her earlier visual work was refined and abstract, created by applying thick layers of oil paint onto canvases laid flat on a table. Heavily relying on bright colors and non-figurative shapes, Adnan's oeuvre, how do you say that? Oeuvre, maybe, has often been compared to the work of painters, Nicolas de Stael and Paul Klee. Colors exist for me as entities in themselves, as metaphysical beings, like the attributes of God exist as metaphysical entities, she would later say. Interesting. So she settled in California and began representing the natural environment around her. Some amazing pieces. So do look her up if you're not aware of Etal Adnan. Born in 1925, died this year in 2021 at the age of 96. Talking of getting old, I'm a little concerned about Her Majesty the Queen in England. She was supposed to attend the Remembrance Sunday services yesterday and was unable to. They say she sprained her back, which sounds a little suspect. I mean, if anybody has sprained their back, they'll know it's very painful. But they just said she wasn't going to be able to stand for that period of time because there's a lot of standing involved in the Remembrance Sunday services. But it just occurred to me that, maybe we just need to be a little thoughtful. We need to, say a prayer for Her Majesty the Queen. Is she 96? I was just thinking that because of Etal Adnan, who was 96. I was just thinking, is the Queen 96? I think she might be. So, I can't imagine a time. She's been on the throne now for longer than any reigning monarch in history. And I would hate for her not to be around. And also Prince Charles becomes the king after her. So that's also something to consider. If you want that to be a thing or not. Thank you to Lorraine, Michelle, Joy, Chanel, Rain, Leon, Liz, Riyadh, and anybody else who's joining us on the chat this morning. There's multiple ways that you can get in touch. If you're watching us on YouTube, there's actually a little messages column there that comes up on my screen. There's also our new web chat facility. You can have a website open in front of you, backchannel.tv. You can just type your message there. There's no login required. And if you have an Echo Show device, this is really the kind of gold standard for Backchannel. So if you have an Echo Show, which is basically an Amazon speaker that's got a screen on it, like a video screen, then you can watch this show, and at the same time, you can also join in through the same way, just by talking to your device. You just communicate. You say your wake-up word, followed by say, followed by your message, and it comes through to us here on Backchannel. Clever, huh? It's 10:45 right now, and been talking about this artist and asking questions about her novel about a kidnapping in Lebanon, which has become a classic of war literature, and she's died at the age of 96. And so I was kind of asking you, if you agree with the late American Arab poet, are your dreams a source of creativity? We touched on this a little bit earlier in the show, And I'm very interested to know if you know of any other maybe famous creatives who use their dreams as a source of inspiration. And some people, they like to have a little notepad next to their bed, and they actually like to write down their dreams. Because some people can't remember their dreams. For some crazy reason, I do seem to remember mine, and my dreams are often quite vivid. But I sleep literally just below the surface of sleep. I'm like on the cusp of waking up all the time. And I've always been a very light sleeper. My son is a very light sleeper. My daughter sleeps like a log, takes after her mother. But it's very interesting to me that like dreams often happen. Am I right in saying that do dreams happen during REM sleep? Is that why your eyes like twitch? Is that when the dreams are happening? Or maybe REM sleep is no dreaming. Maybe you dream just before you come out of sleep. I think that might be when it happens. I think that's why when we wake up, we suddenly remember dreams, is because we've literally been sleeping and dreaming just below the surface of sleep. Maybe that's why I dream a lot, because I don't sleep very well. These are like the philosophical questions you get on Backchannel. They're kind of rhetorical, unless, of course, you would like to respond. Hi, Dan. Thank you for joining Backchannel. Dan's in Texas. Dan, if you'd like to message me, go to a website, backchannel.tv, and you can respond there. Michelle is with us. So's Lorraine. So's Joy. So's Chanel. So's Rain. So's Leon. Thank you very much for being part of this Backchannel Monday morning extravaganza. It's 10:47. You've got me for another 8 minutes or so, and then your pal Hal will be here at 11 Pacific. Hal Rudnick. And tomorrow, just a reminder, tomorrow is my birthday. We'll be celebrating tomorrow, so I really hope you can join us. You can dress up. I appreciate if you're coming to a party, you should put something on. Something special. I don't want you showing up in your PJs. I'm going to make a special effort tomorrow. I'm thinking of wearing a black t-shirt. So maybe you could do the same. You know, wear like the Anthony Davis show uniform. I never wear anything else. I mean, I have like 20 of these for each day of the week. It's 12 minutes before 11. So are your dreams a source of creativity? That's the question we're asking this morning. And I mean, I actually would say that I do my best work when I'm asleep. And don't take that the wrong way. But I mean, in terms of like, if I'm like working on a show or something creative or writing a project or having an idea or brainstorming, like I know that like when I'm in like half in and half out of sleep or even fully asleep, like that's when I do my best ideas. Carlos, thank you for joining us. Carlos is in Mexico and listening to Backchannel this morning. Carlos, if you'd like to message the show, go to a website, backchannel.tv. That's the web chat, and that's how you can talk to me. Unless, of course, you have an Echo Show, which is a speaker with it's got a camera. I keep mine turned off because I don't like to, be watched while I'm flambeing a crepe Suzette. And Clifford's here as well. Hello, Clifford, who's in Iowa. Thank you for joining Backchannel. It's a whole new concept, Backchannel. It's like a radio show with pictures. And if you want to see the pictures, you can see them on YouTube. There's a live stream, or you can have an Echo Show device, the Amazon Alexa speaker that has got a video screen. Just ask your device to open Backchannel, and here we are. We will appear. Very clever. We really are taking technology to the very edge right now. So thank you for being part of the show. We've been talking, we're doing a bit of an obituary, really, for Etal Adnan, the Lebanese-American author and artist who's died at the age of 96. And her novel about a kidnapping in the Lebanon has become a classic of war literature. She was into her 80s when her art started to draw international attention. So, she was born in Beirut, ended up in California, and we've been talking about her art and also her writing. I'll just quote her just for a little bit, just so you can hear the type of stuff that she said. She says, "I always thought that dreaming was the honor of the human species. The logic of dreams is superior to the one we exercise while awake. In dreams, the mind at last finds its courage. It dares what we do not dare. It also creates from nightmares to fantastic calculations. And it perceives reality beyond our fuzzy interpretations. In dreams, we swim and fly, and we are not surprised. Dreams spill over on our days. For some people, they never stop spilling. The visionaries, the hobos, and all those who speak to themselves aloud in the big cities. So, do you agree with the late great American Arab poet? Are your dreams a source of creativity? You can message me on the chat. Just say your activation word, your wake-up word for your speaker, followed by say. Say is the magic word, and then your message. If you're using the web chat at backchannel.tv, just type your message. And you can also watch this show on YouTube. We have a live stream there as well, and there is a messaging option at the bottom. So many ways to get in touch. Hi, Lorraine. Thank you very much for joining us. Clifford, Carlos, Dan, Michelle, Lorraine. Oh, I've said Lorraine twice. Maybe I'm just giving you preferential treatment, Lorraine. Also, hi to Joy and to Chanel and Rain and Will and Max and Billy and Barb and anyone else who's joining us here on Backchannel this morning. It's nice to know that you're part of the show. Just a little recap on what we've been doing over the past couple of hours. We start every morning at 9 a.m. with a newspaper review where we take a look at the morning papers and zigzag right across the US. We started with the LA Times. We looked at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Riyadh asked us to do the Washington Post, so we did. We even looked at the Dayton Daily News for those in Ohio. And we actually talked about infrastructure and public transit and whether or not it's something that you have considered if you're a car driver, just for some healthy environmental practices. So we had quite a long conversation about public transit. And that was off the back of that Ohio rail infrastructure, hopefully getting a boost from the infrastructure deal. And we also talked a little bit about ghost guns, which are the firearms kits bought online, which have fueled an epidemic of violence in the US. Untraceable firearms without serial numbers, assembled from components bought online. They're increasingly becoming the lethal weapon of easy access for those legally barred from buying or owning guns around the country. And here in California, where proliferation has reached epidemic proportions. So we touched on that a little bit. We didn't go into too much detail because, I ended up talking more about the fact that, fat police officers tend to want to fire their weapons rather than chase after criminals. That's where that conversation ended up. Right? That's the good thing about Backchannel, that you never know where it's going to go. Or I certainly don't. And producer Carla, she's more in the dark than anybody. She's like, really? That's where we've ended up with this? This is the magic. This is pure gin in here. Pure gin. Hi to Zuo, who's joined us as well. Zuo is in Wisconsin. So, wow, we've got some very interesting locations today, from Nebraska through Wisconsin we had somebody in, where was it? Someone was in a far-flung, Idaho earlier as well. Thank you very much for that. Okay, it's just about time for me to finish, but thank you for joining Backchannel this morning. We continue with your pal Hal in just a moment. I'm Anthony Davis. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. That's noon Eastern. So whoever you are and wherever you are, don't forget you can join me tomorrow for a special birthday edition of the Anthony Davis Show. Great hosts throughout the day here on Backchannel, so you can join anytime and interact with the hosts. It's the only channel where you can do that, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning at 9. Bye for now.